Welcome back to the smartest year ever, our quest to become the world's greatest conversationalist. My name is Gordy, and I was just wondering how far you would go for science. Today I'm talking about one of the most hardcore studies I have heard of, which is the Minnesota Starvation Experiment. Sounds great, right? Like and subscribe right now if you haven't, so you can keep up every single day. I do this every single day. What would you do if you were asked to starve yourself for science? In 1944, while World War II raged overseas, 36 men in Minnesota volunteered to do exactly that, but they weren't prisoners of war. They were conscientious objectors, men who refused to fight on moral or religious grounds, and they agreed to endure 6 months of starvation in the name of science. The U.S. government needed to understand starvation, not just to help its own soldiers, but to figure out how to safely refeed millions of starving civilians in war-torn Europe. And so Dr. Ancel Keys, a physiologist at the University of Minnesota, launched what would become one of the most infamous studies in the history of nutrition science, the Minnesota Starvation Experiment. Sounds great, right? The 36 men were mostly white, college-educated, and deeply religious, coming from the Civilian Public Service, which was a program of the United States government that provided conscientious objectors with an alternative to military service during World War II. And they lived in dormitories on the university campus where every aspect of their lives was monitored. The study was divided into 3 phases: a 12-week control period to establish baseline data, a 24-week semi-starvation phase where their caloric intake was slashed to just 1,500 calories a day, and a 12-week refeeding phase to assess recovery. The menu was grim. Bread, potatoes, turnips, and cabbage, bland, low-calorie foods meant to replicate the meager rations of wartime Europe. The men were also required to walk 22 miles each week to simulate the physical exertion of war refugees, all the while keeping detailed journals documenting their mental and physical states. Dear diary, I am really freaking hungry. And it worked. Yay! The men dropped an average of 25% of their body weight, becoming gaunt, hollow-eyed, and skeletal, but the physical toll was only part of the story. They became obsessed with food. They read cookbooks like they were porno mags, like cutting out recipes and fantasizing about meals they couldn't have. Some hoarded food, sneaking away with scraps like they were hiding gold, and others became irritable, depressed, unable to focus. One man reportedly chopped off 3 of his own fingers in a fit of psychosis, an act he later claimed he couldn't even remember doing, and another participant had to be removed from the study after experiencing a complete mental breakdown. When the starvation period ended, you'd think that the suffering was over, but the refeeding phase was just as intense. The men ate and ate but remained ravenous. Some consumed over 10,000 calories a day and still felt starving. They complained of intense stomach pain, nausea, bloating, refeeding syndrome, effectively. Dr. Keys discovered that simply reintroducing food wasn't enough. The body needed time to readjust, and some men didn't regain their pre-study weight for months. Keys documented the recovery process meticulously, producing one of the most comprehensive studies on starvation and refeeding ever conducted. The data was used to guide post-war relief efforts in Europe and is still referenced today in eating disorder research and in understanding the long-term effects of severe malnutrition. But the experiment also raised serious ethical questions, as you can imagine. Men may have volunteered, but did they truly understand what they were agreeing to? Today, such a study would have likely been deemed unethical. In 1964, the Declaration of Helsinki established strict guidelines for research involving humans, emphasizing informed consent and minimizing harm, principles that might have prevented the suffering that these men endured, even though that the information gleaned was very valuable. Today, the experiment remains a haunting example of how far people will go in the name of research and how deeply starvation can change a person, body and mind. So there you have it, the Minnesota Starvation Experiment. 36 men, half a year of starvation, and one of the most hardcore studies in the history of modern science that we know of. Thanks to all my sources, which can be found in the YouTube description. Please leave me a comment. Follow, rate, like, subscribe, share with someone who likes this sort of thing. @SmartestYearEver. Hit me up on socials. I do a 1-minute version of all these, so check that out after this. In the meantime, stay curious and stay clever on our quest to become the world's greatest conversationalists. I will see you tomorrow in the smartest year ever.